Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Shabbos Daf continues the list of various cures and treatments for conditions and ailments. We'll have three basic categories here. First of all, one is how you avoid snakes and when they're attacking you or they're hunting you. The next one is how a zava, a woman who has trouble with her cycle, can straighten that out. And the third one is somebody who's jaundiced, how can he heal those? We'll have a long list of treatments for each of these. The Gemara in between will discuss a few of the other halachas mentioned in the Mishnah about certain types of water that's helpful for other things and certain type of foods and what they're good for. Towards the end of the daf, we will actually go back to halacha and talk about whether or not a person is permitted to drink a cup of liquid that causes sterility. The Gemara is in the middle of a discussion about snake bites. We had said that the treatment for a snake bite is to find the fetus of a white donkey and to cut it open and place it upon the snake bite. And that only works if the donkey is not a treifa. The Gemara is going to have a story on the subject. Then the Gemara will discuss what to do if you are attacked by snakes but not bit yet, such as if they're wrapping themselves around you, or if they are chasing you, if they're chasing a man, or if they're chasing a woman, and how to escape from all these scenarios. So first of all, the Gemara says there was a officer of the government of the town of Pumbedisa who was bitten by a snake. And there were 13 white donkeys in the town. He cut open all of them, and they were all treif. He could not find one that did not have an internal injury, and therefore he wasn't able to use any of them to heal a snake bite. But he did hear that there was one more donkey on the other side of town, and he went to go fetch that one, but it was eaten by a lion before he got there. So he wasn't able to find his cure, and therefore he died from the snake bites. Abaye said, it seems like Hashem wanted to keep the cure away from him. It must be that he violated a Gzeira Midirabanan, because we know that the punishment for that is Piretz Geder Yeshchenu Nachash, which is a pasuk in Koheles, which says that somebody who breaks the rules of the Chachamim will be bitten by a snake. And the Gemara says that they responded to Abaye that that's exactly what happened, because after Rav passed away, Rav Yitzchak Bar Bisna made a gzeira in order to decrease simcha, to decrease rejoicing in the town, and he said that they should no longer have hadassim and tree branches adorned with small musical instruments like the bells they used to use to make noise at a wedding. So they shouldn't have these things at weddings anymore, as a sign of mourning. And this man wasn't interested, and he brought his hadassim and he brought his trees with the bells, and therefore he was bitten by the snake and he died. Okay, next the Gemara says if somebody finds that he's wrapped around with a snake, he's being attacked by a snake but hasn't bitten him yet, so he has to remove the snake. So he should go into the water, he should enter the water, and he should take a basket and he should place it gently over the snake's head. He should gently move it between the snake's head and the rest of the snake and himself in order to force the snake off him without antagonizing the snake to bite him. Once he has it off, he should throw it right away into the water, and he should leave the water. That way he'll escape from the snake. Now, if somebody's being chased by a snake, meaning the snake, he's not actively running after him, but he's tracking him in order to attack him. So that means that the snake is following his scent. So what he needs to do is to hide his scent. So if he has some friends with him, they should carry him 4 amas, so that there'll be a jump in the track, and the snake won't be able to follow him. Or he should walk through a stream, the snake wouldn't be able to smell him in the water. Or he should cross a river. And if it's nighttime and he wants to go to sleep, he should take the bed that he lies upon and place it on 4 barrels. That way it'll be off the ground. Now the snake can still climb up to the ceiling and fall onto him, so he should sleep out in the open under the stars. And then he should get 4 cats and tie them one to each leg of the bed that he sleeps upon, and he should place twigs and branches near the feet of the bed, which is in the barrels. That way when the snake approaches and he wants to climb the leg, it'll rattle, and the cats will hear him and they will eat the snake, and that way he'll be protected from them. Okay, now somebody's being chased by a snake should run through sandy areas. The snake have a hard time traveling at high speeds through the sand. Now, snakes sometimes desire women. It's not clear if this is meant to be taken literally or not, but we've certainly seen such things as far as the snake of the early days of creation, So the Gemara says if a woman is being faced by a snake and she doesn't know if the snake is actually desiring her or not, what she should do is throw her clothing in front of him. If he entwines himself in the clothing, that means that he is desiring her and she has a problem. Otherwise, she's okay. If he is, so what should she do? So the Gemara says the first approach is that she should actually be together with her husband in front of the snake. That way it'll disgust the snake. The Gemara says others say that's a bad idea because that'll increase the snake's desire. So what she should do is cut her hair and her nails and throw it in front of him and say, I'm actually having my period right now. Rashi says it's not that the snake will understand, it's just a type of incantation. Now, what should she do if it's too late and the snake has actually entered her? Rashi explains that it actually entered her all the way and now it's inside her. So she should sit upon two barrels and one leg on each of them so that it spreads her legs very far apart and the area is exposed. Then she should take very fatty meat, put it on coals, get a basket of unripe dates and fresh, very fragrant wine, mix all these things together. The smell, she should place all of this underneath herself. She's suspended on the barrels. That scent will cause the snake to stick his head out, and then she should grab him with a pair of tongs that she should make sure that she has handy, pull him out and throw him in the fire, because otherwise he'll just go back inside. The Gemara now refers back to the Mishnah and discusses some of the cures that are mentioned therein. We had said that any normal food anybody's allowed to eat, even if you are taking it for medicinal value, as long as it's something a healthy person would eat, it's okay. The Gemara wants to know what is an example of that. The Gemara brings two examples. The Gemara says the meat of a spleen, tchol meat, and also karshinin, which are lentils. So the Gemara says, what's the issue with these? The Gemara says that they each have opposite values. The tchol is good for the teeth and bad for the intestines, and the karshinin are good for the intestines, and they are bad for the teeth. So you may think that a normal person who's healthy wouldn't eat any of these things because they cause harm. But here the Mishnah is teaching us that we do eat them, and therefore you are allowed to eat them even if you are using it for the value of what it is good for. Next, we said you're allowed to drink whatever you want to drink as long as it's something a normal person would drink. The Gemara says, what does that include? The Gemara says that includes the water of the caper plant, the tzlaf, that is mixed with vinegar. Now, the Gemara asks, Ravina asks, what about drinking urine on Shabbos? The Gemara says that's only for medical. Nobody would ever do that normally, and therefore you wouldn't be allowed to do that. The next item on the list that the Mishnah mentions is what we translated as palm water. The Mishnah said you're not allowed to drink that on Shabbos for health. Now, the words that are used are made dikolim. The Gemara says some people call it made dikorim, which instead of palm water means spiky water because it causes pain to the gallbladder. Now, what is this thing? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Barbruna says that in the West there are 3 trees that grow together and they all bear fruit from the date family. There's a spring that emerges from between these 3 trees, and if you drink 3 cups of water from this spring, it helps loosen the digestive system. The first cup takes away the discomfort, the second one actually speeds the digestion along, and the third one clears it all out of the body so that the person remains healthy. Ula says, by the way, you should just know that Babylonian beer is more effective than that. I tried it. And the Gemara says that's only if you haven't had Babylonian beer for 40 days. Now, another thing that helps with indigestion is Zisum HaMitzri. It's a cocktail. It's discussed in Mesachos Pesachim, Daf Mem Beis, because it has chametz in it. What's it made out of? So it's 1/3 salt, 1/3 turmeric, and the last third is Machlokes of Yosef and Rav Papa, whether it is Sa'ari, whether it is barley flour or it's wheat flour. The Gemara says the easy way to remember is from the word sisani. Sisani is a type of container people used to hold their fruits, their dates, and it has 2 samachs in it. So remember that Rabbi Yosef says Sa'ari. Rabbi Yosef says the barley. Okay, now what do you do with it? So you grind it up, you drink it between Pesach and Shavuos. Somebody who has constipation will have his stomach be loosened, and somebody who suffers from an overly loose stomach will have his stomach firmed up. The next item in the mission was called Kois Akarin, which is a cup of either roots or a type of potion that causes people to be sterile, unable to have children any more. Actually, it's one cup that has these two properties. So the Gemara says, first of all, how do you make a kais akarin, and how do you use it? So the Gemara says as follows. Rabbi Yochanan says you need to take a zuz weight worth of sap from an Alexandrian tree, a zuz weight worth of a tree called alum, and a zuz weight worth of turmeric. You have to take all these things, grind it up well, and mix it either into wine or beer. Now it works as follows. For a zava, a woman who has problems with her regularity, so you can heal her from that by mixing this mixture into wine, 1/3 the mixture and 2/3 wine. That will not cause her to become sterile, but it will heal her from being a zava. If you wanted to cure jaundice, so for that you have to mix it 2 parts in beer. Now the Gemara has a long list of other treatments which you can have for a zava. So the Gemara begins by repeating this one with the kais akarin, and the Gemara says if you don't have that, so then you should bring a container which holds 3 lug, and you should take a Persian onion, you should cook it in wine, and you should give that wine for her to drink, and say to her, stop being a zava. If that doesn't work, then she should sit at the crossroads, and she should hold a cup of wine in her hands, and someone should sneak up behind her and scare her while saying, stop being a zava. Now if that doesn't work, then you should take a fistful of kamuna, a fistful of karkum, which is turmeric, and a fistful of fenugreek, which is what the Teimanim call chilbet. You should cook that all in wine, and you should give her to drink from that, and you should say to her, stop being a zava. Now if that doesn't work, then you should dig 7 holes. In each hole you should burn branches. Before that, if that doesn't work, you should take 60 covers of wine barrels and soak it in water and say they're stopping a zava. If that doesn't work, then she should take a special type of grass which grows sideways called pashtina. She should cook it in wine and soak it in water and say stopping a zava. If that doesn't work, then you should take a special kind of grass that grows between thorns, burn it and place it in cloth that is worn out flax during the summer or worn out cotton during the winter. If that doesn't work, then you make the 7 holes and burn in those holes, in each of those holes, branches of orla trees that are still young, and then she should hold a cup of wine in her hand and she should sit on each hole, and as she gets up from one to go to the next one, you should say stop being a zava. If all of that isn't going to work, or if you don't have that, so then she should bring fine flour and she should rub it on the lower half of the body. And somebody should say, stop being a zava. If you don't have that, then you should take a roasted ostrich egg and put it again in flax, worn out flax during the summer or worn out cotton during the winter. And if that doesn't work, then take a barrel of wine and she should drink a lot of wine. Still no good, then she should take white hairs that are found in the dung of a white mule. Now, if all she has to do is hold those hairs. If she holds it for 1 day, then she will stop being a zava for 2 days. If she holds it for 2 days, she'll stop being a zava for 3 days. If she holds it for 3 days, she'll stop being a zava forever. The Gemara now turns to alternate cures for jaundice. That's when the skin takes on a greenish yellow tint. So we had said before that you can take the mixture of the kais akarin and mix it in 2 parts with beer. If you can't do that, then you should take a salted head of the shibuta fish and you should boil it in beer and drink that. If you can't do that, then you should take the tzir, the fluid that drips out of pickled grasshoppers. If you can't get that, then take small birds. You should take that liquid to the bathhouse with you and you should rub it on the body. And the idea is that the heat combined with the chemical will cause the fever to leach out all the jaundice. Now, if you can't get to the bathhouse, use a different source of heat, stand between your fireplace and the wall. Rabbi Yochanan says you could also wrap a person tightly in a blanket, and that'll also help for it. Now, Rav Acha Bar Yosef actually had this illness, and Rav Kahana made him this cure, and he was healed through it. Now, if you can't do that, then you should bring a container that holds 3 lug filled with Persian dates, 3 lug of wax that overflows from a honeycomb, and 3 lug of red aloe. You should boil them all in beer and drink that. Okay, if you can't do that, then you should bring a young donkey that's still with its mother. You should shave the middle of your head, and then you should bloodlet from the forehead of the donkey and pour the blood on the shaved part of your head. Just be careful it shouldn't get in your eyes because it could cause blindness. If you can't do that, then you should bring the pickled head of a ram, and you should boil it in beer and drink that. If not, you can't get that, then you should get a spotted pig, tear it open, and place it on your heart. If you can't do that, then you should take leeks from the middle of the road where it's very sharp, and that'll, of course, bring up the fever and drive out the jaundice. Now the Gemara relates it was an Arab who had this, and he said to his gardener, can you take my cloak or your cloak and fill it up with these leeks? And he ate them. And then he said, lend me your cloak, and he wrapped himself in it, and he slept in it, and the fever began to come out of him, and it heated up so much that it actually caused the cloak to start to burn, and pieces fell off it bit by bit. Okay, that's the end of the cures. Now the Gemara says, hold on a second, you're telling me, and we said it earlier, that a cure for jaundice is to take the cup of akarin, which also causes sterility. The Gemara says, how are you allowed to do that? You're not allowed to make a person sterile. So, right, how do we know that? Because it says, so you're not allowed to do this. So the Gemara says, no, that's where you cause sterility directly. Here, you give it the chemical to the person, and the sterility develops later. Similar thing, we see that you're allowed to cause sterility in a rooster. Rabbi Yochanan says if you cut off his carbolet, the red crown, then he'll become sterile on his own later. So you're allowed to do that because you're not making him sterile directly, it develops after it. So the Gemara says that's not a proof. As a matter of fact, the whole thing's wrong. Because the rooster doesn't actually become sterile by cutting off his red crown. He just becomes upset, and he becomes so upset that he cannot reproduce anymore. But physically, he is capable. So that's not a proof. So the Gemara, therefore, continues this discussion, has another answer, and we will get to it as part of Daf Kaf Yud Aleph, which we will get to.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.